No one saved the fallen alien warrior until a human nurse said, "You're safe now." In the surgical ward of Epsilon Station 9, the air smelled faintly of antiseptic and ozone. The steady thrum of reactors pulsed beneath the deck plates, a heartbeat of metal that never quite matched her own. Lieutenant Nora Hayes adjusted the sterile band around her wrist and tried to still the tremor in her fingers. She had seen human soldiers burned, shattered, and saved by her hands before, but the being on the table now was no human. The alien's skin glimmered like polished cobalt beneath the surgical lights, and his chest rose shallowly against the harness that kept him from thrashing in pain. She had never treated one of his kind before. None of them had ever asked for help. Hit that subscribe button and tap the bell icon so you never miss our latest uploads. They had found him on the battlefield orbiting a fractured moon, a single body drifting among wreckage, his armor torn open, his blood crystallizing into tiny blue shards in the vacuum before the rescue drones hauled him in. The report called him an enemy combatant, priority low, but the medical corps had no time to debate politics. Nora had volunteered before command could stop her. Maybe it was defiance, or maybe it was the image of that wounded figure still clutching his weapon, even as his oxygen leaked away, refusing to die. Whatever the reason, she now stood over him, watching his strange eyes flicker open with a spark of feral awareness that made the medbay monitors surge. His gaze fixed on her face, pupils slitted and golden. The translator node embedded in the collar of his armor blinked erratically, struggling to interpret the fragments of sound he tried to form. "Stay," he rasped in a voice like stone scraping over glass. The single word was enough to stop her breath. He didn't sound threatening. He sounded lost. Nora leaned closer, gloved hands hovering above the wound that split across his ribs. "I'm not your enemy," she whispered, knowing he couldn't yet understand the words but hoping tone might bridge what language could not. He flinched when her scalpel touched his skin, and his hand, massive, clawed, trembling, shot up to seize her wrist. For a heartbeat, she thought he'd crush her. Instead, his grip loosened as if the strength bled away with his color. "Help," he said, the translation finally catching, rendering the sound with mechanical clarity. The single plea silenced every doubt. Nora nodded once sharply and gestured for the auto-sutures. Her assistant drone whirred forward, its arms extending delicate manipulators. The procedure demanded precision. Alien physiology meant unknown organs, unknown toxins, unknown consequences of anesthesia. But hesitation would kill him faster than ignorance. She relied on instinct and training, the human kind that thrived on improvisation, not algorithm. The first incision released a cascade of bioluminescent fluid that shimmered like liquid sapphire. It coated her gloves, glowing faintly as she worked. The alien's breathing slowed, his pulse fluttering weakly beneath the scanners. "Come on," she muttered. "You've survived space itself. Don't give up now." The words weren't protocol, but they steadied her. She worked through the long minutes as alarms pulsed and the station trembled with distant impacts. The war was still raging somewhere beyond those reinforced walls, but in this room it had distilled to one truth: survival. When the wound finally sealed under the shimmer of synthetic grafts, she exhaled, realizing she'd been holding her breath. Nora removed her gloves, leaving faint traces of blue light smeared across the disposal tray. The alien's vitals stabilized, though faintly. He would live if infection didn't take him, and if her superiors didn't decide otherwise. The Galactic Accord forbade aiding hostile species, yet the Code of Care demanded all sentient life be preserved. She knew which law she could live with. As she leaned close to check the oxygen feed, his eyes opened again, dull but focused. "Why?" he asked through the stuttering translator. The word was soft, bewildered, almost childlike. Nora swallowed. "Because someone had to," she said. "Because we don't let people die alone." He studied her as though parsing a puzzle beyond comprehension. Then his eyelids drifted shut, surrendering to sleep. For the first time since the rescue, the medbay fell quiet except for the hum of machinery. Nora cleaned her tools, documented the procedure, and sealed the logs under a false identifier. If Command discovered she had defied quarantine orders, her career would end here. Yet when she looked at the still form on the bed, something in her chest felt steadier than it had in months. The war had taken friends, mentors, and faith, but tonight she had saved someone who should have been an enemy. That had to mean something, Hours passed. The ward emptied except for the drone sweeping debris from the last triage bay. Nora remained, pretending to recalibrate monitors while keeping watch. The alien's healing patterns fascinated her, the luminous veins pulsing along his arms, the faint harmonic hum his body emitted as it regenerated tissue. It was almost musical, vibrating against the sterile air like the faint echo of a choir no human ear was meant to hear. She found herself imagining what world produced such a being, what sky cast that deep blue skin, what winds carried that song. Maybe he'd been told stories of humans as monsters, just as her people had painted his kind as savages. And maybe both were wrong. When the shift lights dimmed to simulate night, Nora rested her head against the console. Her reflection floated over the viewport, framed by distant stars. The war had started long before she was born, something about territory and ancient ruins, and who had fired first. She had stopped trying to remember the justifications. All she knew was exhaustion. Yet seeing that alien breathing because of her hands stirred an ache she hadn't felt since med school, the belief that healing mattered more than winning. The hum of his body deepened, synchronized with the faint rhythm of the ship's engines, and she realized the impossible. His biology was adapting to the station's electromagnetic field. He was aligning himself to their world, as if reaching for coexistence even in unconsciousness. She was still marveling when the door hissed open behind her. Commander Rourke stepped in, tall and grim in the pale light. His eyes flicked from the charts to the patient, then to her. "Lieutenant Hayes," he said evenly. "Report." Nora straightened. "The subject stabilized, sir. Wound sealed, vitals nominal." He crossed his arms. "You treated him without clearance." She held her ground. "He would have died." Rourke's jaw tightened. "He's the enemy, Nora. Orders were explicit." She looked down at the sleeping alien, at the faint rise and fall of that broad chest. "Maybe," she said quietly, "but dying on our table doesn't win us anything." Rourke's silence stretched, the air between them taut as wire. Finally he exhaled. "You always did let your conscience outrank protocol." There was no anger, only weariness. "You realize what happens if Command learns about this?" Nora nodded. "I'll take responsibility." He studied her another moment, then keyed the door shut. "Not tonight you won't," he said. "I'll scrub the logs." Officially, he didn't survive extraction. She blinked. "Why?" Rourke shrugged. "Because I'm tired of counting corpses." With that, he turned and left, leaving her alone again with the quiet hum and the faint glow of blue light. Nora sat back, heart pounding with relief and guilt in equal measure. She owed Rourke, though she suspected he didn't want thanks. Outside the viewport, a debris field drifted past, a graveyard of machines. The war devoured everything it touched, even mercy. But not tonight. She adjusted the alien's IV flow and whispered, almost to herself, "You're safe now." The translator, still active at his collar, clicked softly, rendering her words in his tongue. A faint twitch moved across his lips, almost a smile. For the first time, she dared to hope he could hear her through the fog of sleep. The following morning, medbay routines resumed, and Nora forced herself into the rhythm of checklists. Yet beneath the sterile precision of her work ran a current of anticipation. When she finally approached bed 6, she found him awake. His eyes followed her movements, calmer now, though confusion lingered. "You live," she said, keeping her tone neutral. He inclined his head slightly, a gesture that might have meant acknowledgement or gratitude. The translator flickered. "You saved me." She smiled faintly. "That's my job." He frowned, as though the concept of duty and compassion woven together made no sense. "Humans help enemies." "Sometimes," she said. "Sometimes we remember we're all just trying to survive." He seemed to test the idea like a new limb, uncertain of its balance. "My kind, it would not." "Then maybe that's what makes us different." The words left her before she could soften them. He tilted his head, not insulted but intrigued. "Different," he repeated, tasting the syllables. "Maybe better." She shook her head. "Not better, just trying." For a long moment they held each other's gaze, and something unspoken bridged the gap between species, a fragile understanding born in blood and kindness. Over the next days, she monitored his recovery in secret. Rourke kept his word, marking the alien's case as terminated, while diverting extra supplies under routine requisitions. The alien, whose name she finally learned was Care, regained strength at astonishing speed. His physiology absorbed nutrients and radiation alike, converting them into luminous energy that mended torn muscle and bone. When he could finally sit upright, Nora helped him into a reinforced exo-brace. He towered over her, yet moved with a surprising gentleness, careful not to tear the cords tethering him to the monitors. "You risk much," he said one evening as she replaced a sensor patch. "For me," she shrugged. "For a patient." Care regarded her, the golden hue of his eyes deepening. "Patient," he echoed softly. "Your word for wounded one," she nodded. "It means someone worth saving." The translator rendered her tone faithfully, and his expression shifted, the faint glow of his skin pulsing brighter along his cheek ridges. "Then I will remember." His gaze lingered on her hands, the same hands that had pulled him from death. "Your touch burns," he murmured. "But it heals." She felt heat rise to her cheeks. "That's biology, not magic." Yet even as she said it, she wasn't sure. The spark between them felt older than science, a current of empathy neither race had words for. That night the station shook with a near impact. Alarms blared, throwing the med bay into red light. Nora rushed to the window, a patrol skirmish nearby, flashes of plasma fire slicing the darkness. Care staggered to his feet, instincts flaring. "My people," he said. "They attack. They think you're dead," she replied. "If they breach the hull, this place goes with it." He turned to her, torn between duty and the bond forming like a fragile flame between them. "Then you must leave." "I'm not leaving my patients," she shot back. "That includes you." For a heartbeat, their defiance mirrored each other's, a human and an alien united not by allegiance, but by refusal to abandon life. The tremors subsided as defense grids engaged, intercepting the assault. When quiet returned, Nora found Care still standing beside her, chest heaving, eyes wide. "You fight for others," he said, almost reverent. "Always," she answered. "It's what keeps us human." He looked at her as if seeing the species anew. "Perhaps," he said slowly, "it is what will save us all." She didn't know then how literal his words would become. But in that moment, beneath the flickering lights and the hum of machines, the first fragile thread of peace began, not between governments or fleets, but between two people who refused to see an enemy where there was only pain. Outside, the wrecked moon turned on its slow axis, casting shards of silver light through the viewport. Nora stood beside Care's bed as his strength returned, feeling the weight of what they had defied. She didn't know if Command would discover the deception, or if Care's kin would ever believe he had been saved by human hands. But she knew this. For one night, compassion had triumphed over fear. She reached out, brushing the back of his hand lightly, and the translator murmured her whisper into his language. "You're safe now." Days bled into one another aboard Epsilon Station 9, but the rhythm inside the med bay changed since Care's awakening. Nora felt it like a second pulse beneath her own, a constant awareness that the line between healer and conspirator was thinning. Every glance at the surveillance panels made her shoulders tense, yet every time Care's eyes met hers, calmness followed. He learned faster than she imagined. Within 3 days, he spoke halting English without the translator's help, his voice deep and deliberate, each word weighed like a stone before release. The wounds along his ribs had closed into faint silvery lines that shimmered when light struck them, proof of the alien regenerative gift her people barely understood. The more he healed, the more questions she had. What did his people call themselves? Why did they fight humans at all? Yet each time she asked, he turned quiet, the gold in his eyes dimming to amber. "Not safe," he would say. Words watched, she understood. Even here, among steel walls and blinking monitors, war's shadow crept into every silence. Still, small truths escaped in fragments. His world Erath orbited a dying star. His kind, the Theron, fought to claim new territory before their sun collapsed. Humanity's colonization of nearby systems had drawn them into collision, neither side willing to yield. When he spoke of Erath's oceans, vast and glowing like liquid glass, Nora saw not an enemy but a refugee. One evening, she found him sitting upright on the bed, studying his reflection in the glass panel beside the vitals display. "Your people fear us," he said softly, his words careful but sure. "You see monsters." She hesitated. "We fear what we don't understand." His reflection turned to meet her eyes. "Do you understand me?" The question was simple, but it lodged in her chest. I'm trying, she said. That's enough, he murmured, almost to himself. He traced a clawed fingertip along the faint scar at his ribs. You changed my song, he said. Inside, she frowned. Your song? He touched his chest. Every Tharan has one. A resonance of life. You mended mine with human hands. Now it carries two harmonies. The thought left her oddly breathless. She had heard soldiers talk about battle trauma, about how saving a life marked both rescuer and rescued. But Care meant it literally. Something of her had woven into him, and something of him lingered in her. She felt it when she closed her eyes, a faint hum beneath her heartbeat, as though the medbay itself remembered their connection. That night, she dreamt of waves breaking against a luminous shore, and when she woke, Care was watching her from his bed, as if he had heard the same sea within his sleep. Command inspections loomed on the horizon, their schedules announced in curt transmissions. Nora worked double shifts, scrubbing every trace of her unauthorized patient from the records. Rourke kept his promise, feeding disinformation into the system. Casualty logs, expired identifiers, erased footage. Yet secrecy bred paranoia. One slip, one curious medic wandering through the wrong door, and Care's presence would surface like a flare. To keep him hidden, they relocated him to the cryo-wing's maintenance alcove, a place reeking of coolant and forgotten equipment. It wasn't comfort, but it was safety. Nora brought portable heaters, blankets, and ration packs. You shouldn't risk this, he said as she adjusted a heater near his cot. You've already defied your leaders. She smiled faintly. I'm good at bad decisions. He studied her a long moment before saying, Humans fight wars with rules that kill mercy. She froze, realizing how accurately he'd seen through them. Maybe, she admitted, but rules aren't stronger than conscience. His eyes softened. Your conscience saved me. Perhaps it will save more. She wanted to believe that, but reality pressed heavier. Reports filtered through. Ships lost, colonies scorched, treaties failing before they began. Peace felt like fiction. Yet every time she saw Care's careful smile or heard the low hum of his healing body, something in her refused despair. If understanding could exist between two beings who were meant to destroy each other, maybe the universe wasn't beyond repair. A week later, fate tested that fragile hope. The inspection team arrived early. Nora had just finished resetting Care's IV feed when alarms blared. Medical Division, prepare for Level 2 audit. Her stomach dropped. Rourke's voice crackled over comms. Hayes, move him now. They're sweeping lower decks first. She grabbed Care's wrist. We have to go. His strength had returned. He lifted her emergency pack without effort. Together they slipped through dim corridors pulsing with red light. The maintenance wing was a maze of conduits and coolant pipes, echoing with distant footsteps. At one junction, Nora pressed him against the wall, breath ragged. Quiet. A pair of inspectors passed close, their scanners flicking blue light across the metal. Care's body heat radiated through her uniform, steady and alive. When the voices faded, she exhaled. Almost there, they reached the secondary med archive, an unused wing sealed since the reactor breach last year. Nora forced the door with a bypass chip and ushered him inside. Dust floated in the air like forgotten starlight. You'll be safe here till it's over, she whispered. Care looked around, puzzled. Safe, always you say this. Because I mean it. He tilted his head, voice softer. Does saying make it true? She wanted to answer yes, but the ache in her throat betrayed doubt. Sometimes it's all we have. He stepped closer. Then I will believe you. The sincerity in his gaze made her heart stutter. Hours crawled by. From their hiding place, they heard the inspectors questioning staff, the hiss of security doors opening and sealing. Nora reviewed her datapad obsessively, monitoring the station's life support grid to ensure Care's presence didn't trip anomalies. His energy signature was faint enough to pass for malfunctioning equipment. Still, tension built like pressure in a sealed chamber. When silence finally settled again, she slumped against the wall, exhaustion washing over her. Care sat beside her, their shoulders nearly touching. You are tired, he said. Humans burn bright but short. She gave a weak laugh. Story of our species. He regarded her curiously. Yet your flame warms even enemies. Maybe that's why we keep fighting, she said half to herself. We forget warmth burns too. His golden eyes met hers, unwavering. I do not forget. For a moment the hum between them deepened, a resonance she felt rather than heard. The air seemed to thrum, her pulse aligning with his. She wondered if this was what he meant by shared harmonies. Then his expression changed, head tilting as if listening to distant thunder. "What is it?" she whispered. "Engines," he said. "Yours and mine. Battle near." Before she could react, the station trembled violently. Alarm screamed through the halls. She grabbed her communicator. "Rourke, what's happening?" Static answered. Then his strained voice, "Theran warship breached orbit. Defense grid failing. Evacuation protocols in effect." Care rose in one fluid motion, strength and purpose returning like a flood. "They have come for me. Then we need to hide you better." "No." His tone left no room for argument. "If my kin destroy this place, your people die because of me." Nora stepped forward, catching his arm. "You can't face them. You're still healing." He looked down at her hand on his skin, then met her eyes. "You saved my life, Nora Hayes. Let me return it." The sound of her name in his voice made something twist inside her. You can't stop a war alone." "Neither could you, but you tried." Before she could answer, the deck shuddered under another impact. Emergency lights flickered, bathing the corridor in red. Care moved toward the door, but she blocked him. "If you go out there, they'll kill you on sight. Better I die free than hide while innocents burn." She saw it then, the warrior beneath the wounded patient, the fire that had carried him through vacuum and pain. She couldn't chain that spirit, but she could guide it. "Then we do this my way," she said. He hesitated. "Your way? You're not dying on my table or anyone else's. You want to save this station. You'll need a human to talk them down." Minutes later, they reached the observation deck overlooking the docking bay. Chaos reigned below, crew scrambling for shuttles, drones hauling cargo, alarms drowning speech. Beyond the reinforced glass, the vast silhouette of a Theran warship loomed, its hull wreathed in ghostly blue flame. Care's gaze locked on it, a mixture of awe and dread. "That is my commander's ship," he said. "If I can signal them without getting vaporized." She finished. He nodded. "They will heed only one of their own." She stared at the comm array mounted near the viewport. "You'll need access through the external relay. It's open space." "Then I go." "You'll need protection," she said, grabbing a spare exosuit from the emergency locker. He examined the armor, its design awkward on his frame, but accepted it. As she sealed the suit's clasps, her hands brushed against his chest plate. His heartbeat pulsed strong beneath the barrier, steadying her more than any order ever had. "If this works," she said, "you'll save both sides." He touched the edge of her helmet visor gently. "If it fails, remember my song." She wanted to speak, but the words caught. Instead, she nodded, and together they moved toward the airlock. Outside, vacuum stretched like an ocean of silence. Care propelled himself along the maintenance rail toward the comm relay, his body cutting through starlight like a fragment of living cobalt. Nora monitored from the viewport, her breath fogging the glass. She saw him reach the panel and attach the interface. The station trembled again, another blast from the warship's cannons. He had seconds. She opened the comm channel. "Care, talk to them now." His voice came through, distorted but strong. "This is Care of the Theran Guard. Ceasefire. There are wounded within, humans who saved me." Static roared, then a voice in his language answered, harsh and disbelieving. Nora couldn't understand, but Care's tone sharpened, fierce and pleading. "Listen to me. They spared your warrior." The silence that followed was unbearable. Then the warship's lights flickered, and the barrage ceased. Nora gasped as sensors confirmed weapons offline. Care remained motionless, tethered to the relay, his body framed by the starfield. Finally, his voice returned quieter. They heard, "They will stand down." Relief crashed through her. "Get back in here before your suit gives out." He pushed off, gliding toward the airlock. The moment he crossed inside, gravity reclaimed him, and he stumbled into her arms. She caught him, laughing through tears she hadn't realized were falling. "You did it," she said. "You actually did it." He smiled faintly, exhaustion dimming his glow. "You said, your way." "Yeah," she breathed. "Guess it worked." Behind them, the station's intercom crackled with confused chatter as ceasefire confirmations rippled through the fleet. Nora removed his helmet, her hands shaking. His skin was cold beneath her touch, but his eyes burned bright. You saved 1,000, she said. No, he murmured. We did. She wanted to answer, but the words dissolved into the space between them. For once, silence felt like peace. That peace, fragile as it was, wouldn't last. Command would demand answers, and the Tharan would question Care's loyalty. But for this brief interlude, humanity's best and worst, fear, courage, compassion, had converged into something greater. Nora leaned against the wall, her head resting beside his. Outside the viewport, 2 fleets hung motionless, enemies held at bay by the courage of 1 wounded warrior and 1 stubborn nurse. She closed her eyes, hearing that faint harmonic hum again, the song of 2 lives intertwined across the gulf of war. And for the first time since the fighting began, she believed peace might be possible, not through treaties or surrender, but through the simple, stubborn act of reaching out a hand. The silence that followed the ceasefire felt heavier than any bombardment. On Epsilon Station 9, every corridor held its breath, waiting for the next order that never came. Nora Hayes moved through the medbay like a ghost, her senses tuned to every flicker of light, every heartbeat of machinery. Outside the viewport, the Tharan warship hung motionless, a leviathan in orbit, its blue fires dimmed to a calm pulse. For the first time since she'd been stationed here, the stars felt close enough to touch. Yet peace, she knew, was fragile, a heartbeat between storms. Care sat on the recovery bed, armored chest rising slow but steady, his gaze fixed on the silent warship. They will come, he said quietly. To speak or to kill. Nora crossed her arms, more to stop herself from shaking than for authority. Then we'll be ready for either. She tried to sound calm, but her mind raced through possibilities. Command would demand explanations soon. The Tharan would send envoys or missiles. What did you tell them? She asked. Care's golden eyes flicked toward her. That humans saved me. That mercy is not weakness. The translator caught his tone perfectly, deep and resonant. My commander will not understand. Then help me make him. He tilted his head. You would speak to him? If it means stopping this madness, yes. For a long moment he said nothing, then gave a slow nod. You are brave, Nora Hayes. She smiled faintly. Or foolish? Hard to tell the difference these days. Hours later, the message arrived, an encrypted ping on the outer frequency, Tharan code pulsing through the comm grid. Rourke called her to the command deck, his face pale under the emergency lights. They're asking for you, he said, disbelief roughening his voice. By name. Me? Specifically. Said the healer of Care will come alone to the docking bay. Nora swallowed hard. They won't trust soldiers. Rourke studied her a long moment. You sure about this? If I don't go, they'll think we're hiding him, he exhaled. Then you'll have backup on standby. She shook her head. No guns, Commander. This has to look like peace. Peace doesn't come easy, he muttered. No, she said, but someone has to start it. Care insisted on accompanying her despite his weakened state. When she protested, he simply said, If I do not stand beside you, they will see you as prisoner. Not ally. The docking bay airlock hissed open to reveal the silhouette of a Tharan envoy stepping through the blue mist of the containment field. The being was taller than Care, his armor patterned in shifting iridescent tones that caught the light like scales beneath water. He held no visible weapon, yet power radiated from every motion. Behind him came 2 guards, their movements sharp and disciplined. The envoy's voice echoed through the chamber, resonant even before translation. Care of the guard, you live. Because of them, Care replied, gesturing toward Nora. Because of her. The envoy's gaze turned to Nora, unblinking. Human. The translator rendered it flat, almost accusatory. She stood her ground, heart hammering. Lieutenant Nora Hayes, Medical Corps. You defied your warlords to aid an enemy. I defied cruelty, she said simply. The envoy's eyes narrowed. Mercy costs lives. So does pride. The alien's mandibles flexed, a gesture she couldn't read as threat or thought. You believe saving one soldier changes the tide? It changed his, she said, nodding toward Care. Maybe that's where it starts. For a moment silence hung like a drawn blade. Then the envoy turned to Care. You speak for her? I speak for truth, Care answered. They could have left me to die. Instead, they gave me life. The envoy's gaze returned to Nora. Why risk your own kind's wrath? She hesitated, then said softly, Because someone had to. He regarded her for a long, unreadable moment. Then he extended a clawed hand, not in threat but ritual. "Then speak, healer. Speak of peace." The translator stuttered, almost unable to keep up with the nuance. Nora stepped forward, her pulse roaring in her ears. "I don't know your politics, your history, your grudges," she said, "but I know what war does. I've held too many dying in my arms, human and otherwise. Maybe it's time we stopped counting bodies and started saving what's left." The envoy's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his stance, a faint easing of tension. "You would have us surrender?" "No," she said. "I'd have us survive." The envoy turned to Care, speaking in their native tongue. The translator lagged, struggling to parse the layered tones, but Nora caught fragments: honor, exile, choice. Care's shoulders straightened. "I accept," he said finally. "Accept what?" she asked. He looked at her, calm but resolute. "They will take me as envoy to your command, to speak for truce." Relief and dread tangled in her chest. "That's good." "Dangerous," he said. "If either side falters, they will kill me." She met his gaze. "Then I'm going with you." "Nora, don't argue. You need someone who can translate both ways." He almost smiled. "You are relentless. Occupational hazard." Preparations began at once. The human crew watched in wary silence as Care and Nora boarded the shuttle that would bridge the space between enemies. Through the viewport, the Theran warship loomed like a cathedral forged of light and metal. Nora's hands trembled on the console, though she hid it well. Care sat beside her, eyes distant. "Your heart beats loud," he said. "It's supposed to," she replied. "Means I'm alive. Means you fear. Same thing sometimes." The shuttle docked with a soft clang, and the hatch opened to a corridor bathed in sapphire glow. The air tasted faintly of ozone and sea salt, a trace of Erath's atmosphere. She followed Care, each step echoing like a drumbeat of history. The Tharian command chamber was vast, its ceiling a dome of translucent crystal showing the stars beyond. At its center stood a figure larger than any Nora had seen, Care's commander. His armor shimmered with living circuitry, his presence radiating command. "You return from death," he said, his voice carrying through the chamber like thunder. "And bring a human." Care bowed slightly. "She saved me." "Then she stole you," the commander replied. "No," Care said, straightening. "She taught me life is more than orders." The commander's eyes flared gold. "You question the guard?" "I question endless death." The silence that followed felt infinite. Nora's throat tightened, but she stepped forward anyway. "He's right," she said. "Whatever you think of us, this war serves no one. You've seen what we can do to each other. We're killing tomorrow just to avenge yesterday." The commander's gaze pierced her. "You speak as if you understand loss." "I do." Her voice trembled but didn't break. "I've lost friends, homes, faith, but not the will to hope." The massive alien studied her for what felt like hours. Finally, he turned to Care. "You would tie your honor to this human?" Care's answer was steady. "To her courage, yes." The commander looked between them, then spoke in a tone that blended command with weariness. "Our kind does not forgive easily, but perhaps it begins with one." He raised a hand, signaling his guards to lower their weapons. "You will deliver this message to your leaders. There will be ceasefire talks, one cycle only. After that, if your kind betrays this truce, the stars will burn again." Nora exhaled shakily. "We'll make it count." When they returned to Epsilon Station, Rourke met them at the airlock, disbelief etched deep in his features. "Tell me I'm hearing right. Theron agreed to ceasefire." Nora nodded. "One cycle to prove we can keep it." Rourke rubbed his temples. "Hayes, you've just rewritten a war protocol." "We did what needed to be done," she said. Care stood behind her, silent but radiant. The station crew watched them like living myth, a human nurse and an alien warrior who'd stopped a battle with nothing but truth. In the days that followed, engineers converted the lower hangar into a neutral zone for the first direct talks between species. Nora oversaw medical preparations, ensuring both sides could coexist without contagion or misunderstanding. Despite the progress, tension remained thick as gravity. A single spark could unravel everything. Care stayed close, serving as both liaison and protector. They spoke often during the quiet hours, of his home's dying light, of Earth's distant oceans, of how strange it was to find peace in a place built for war. One evening she asked, "Do you think it will last?" He looked out the viewport at the stars. Nothing lasts, but moments shape eternity. She smiled faintly. That's almost poetic. You make me poetic, he said, tone earnest enough to make her heart ache. Careful, she teased. Humans fall for that sort of talk. Then you will fall, he asked, half curious, half hopeful. She laughed softly. I already did, into trouble. But trouble came sooner than either expected. A rogue human ship, one that hadn't received or believed in the ceasefire, entered the system. Its captain, driven by vengeance, opened fire on the Tharan vessel without warning. The fragile truce shattered in an instant. Explosions rippled across the void as both fleets scrambled, confusion turning to chaos. Nora raced to the command deck, shouting into comms, "Stand down! It's a false engagement!" Static drowned her voice. "They're not listening!" Rourke yelled. Kerr seized the console. "Patch me through." His voice roared across the channels. "Cease fire! By command of the Guard!" Some Tharan ships hesitated, recognizing him, but others, unaware or unconvinced, continued firing. The commander's warship took a direct hit, flames licking across its hull. Nora grabbed Kerr's arm. "If that ship goes down, the truce dies with it." He nodded grimly. "Then we go." Before she could argue, he sprinted for the hangar. She followed, adrenaline burning away fear. They launched in the same shuttle that had carried them to peace, now diving into battle. Debris spun around them, flashes of light painting the darkness. "I'll handle the controls," she said. "You focus on the signal." "Agreed," he replied, fingers dancing across alien runes. The shuttle weaved between wreckage until the commander's ship loomed ahead, venting plasma. Docking clamps engaged with a jolt, and they entered through emergency seals. Inside, smoke choked the air. Bodies, Tharan and human prisoners alike, lay scattered amid flickering consoles. Kerr moved with desperate purpose, calling out in his native tongue. They found the commander pinned beneath debris, armor cracked but eyes still fierce. "You came," he rasped. "With her." Kerr knelt beside him. "Peace cannot die with you." The commander's gaze shifted to Nora. "Human healer," he said, voice weak but resolute. "You carry truth. Keep it." Nora knelt, pressing medgel to his wounds, though she knew it was futile. "Hold on," she whispered. He managed a faint smile. Perhaps mercy. His strength. His eyes dimmed and silence fell heavy. Kerr bowed his head. "He dies free," he said softly. Nora touched his shoulder. "Then let's make sure it meant something." They transmitted the commander's final message across all frequencies, a joint call for ceasefire renewed in his name. The words echoed through the chaos. "Honor the fallen through peace." One by one, ships ceased fire. The silence that followed was ragged but real. Nora slumped against the bulkhead, exhaustion threatening to pull her under. Kerr knelt beside her, his armor scorched, his skin faintly glowing through cracks. "You did it again," he said. "Saved more than lives." She shook her head. "We did." His hand found hers, fingers rough yet gentle. "Your people may never see what you've done." "Doesn't matter," she whispered. "You see it." Outside, the fires faded into darkness, replaced by the cold shimmer of stars. They sat together in the ruined corridor, two survivors bound by something neither war nor time could undo. Kerr looked at her, his golden eyes reflecting the endless void. "Your kind fights with heart, not claws," he said. "That is why you endure," she smiled faintly. "And your kind fights with honor. Maybe together we're stronger." He nodded slowly. "Together." The translator's voice softened the word, turning it into a promise. Nora leaned back against the wall, eyes heavy but mind alive with the impossible truth. They had built peace from the wreckage of war, one heartbeat at a time, and somewhere beyond the shattered hull, the universe took its first quiet breath of relief. The corridor lights flickered like dying stars as repair drones glided through the wreckage, their metallic limbs clicking softly against the torn panels. Nora Hayes moved slowly through the haze of coolant vapor, her boots leaving faint prints in the dust and ash that clung to every surface. The scent of burnt circuitry and ionized blood lingered, the mingling of human and Tharan death indistinguishable now. Kerr walked beside her, his armor scorched and dull, though his eyes burned steady with purpose. "The ceasefire signal holds," he said quietly, scanning a holographic feed on his gauntlet. "Both sides retreating to defensive distance." She nodded, exhaustion heavy in her limbs. Then it worked. But victory felt hollow. Around them, med teams, human and Tharan alike, moved in uneasy coordination, tending to the wounded with a shared silence that could shatter at any moment. Every glance carried suspicion, every gesture measured. Nora knelt beside a fallen human marine, whose pulse still fluttered faintly beneath her fingers. "Stabilizer," she called, and a Tharan medic hesitated before handing over a vial. Their claws trembled, unused to offering help instead of harm. "Thank you," she said softly. The alien gave a curt nod, confusion flickering in its golden eyes. For a moment, the endless war narrowed to one shared act of saving. She sealed the wound and looked up to find Care watching her with quiet pride. "You lead by example," he said. "They will follow." She wanted to believe that, but history weighed too heavy. "They might just wait until it's safe to start hating again," she muttered. Care tilted his head, expression unreadable. "Hatred is easier than healing, but easier things rarely last." His words settled in her mind like seeds she didn't yet know how to nurture. The faint hum of the ship's surviving reactors underscored their movements, a rhythm of persistence amid ruin. When the last of the wounded were secured, Rourke's voice crackled through her comm. "Hayes, report. The Tharan commander's replacement wants to meet." "Neutral ground, mid-bay conference hall." She exchanged a glance with Care. "You coming?" "If they mean peace, they will expect me. If they mean vengeance, they will need me." The conference hall was once a hangar, wide echoing, the walls streaked with soot and blood. A long table had been assembled from scavenged panels, half of it reflecting human alloy, the other half Tharan crystal. The symbolism wasn't lost on Nora. Around it sat soldiers, diplomats, and skeptics from both sides. When she entered, the hum of conversation faltered. Care followed, every movement measured to avoid triggering instinctive fear. Across the table, the new Tharan commander rose, a female with markings of deep violet across her crest, her bearing regal and severe. "Care of the guard," she said, voice sharp as glass. "You defy death twice and bring a healer with you. Explain." Care inclined his head. "This war dishonors us both. The human saved my life, and through her I saw truth. Survival is not victory." The commander's eyes narrowed. "You speak treason." "I speak sense," he replied. "Your leader died believing mercy could be strength. Would you make his death hollow?" The room thickened with tension. Nora stepped forward before the silence could curdle into violence. "Commander," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor beneath. "I'm not here as a soldier. I'm a nurse. I don't decide who lives or dies by rank or flag, only by heartbeat. You can call that weakness if you want, but it's the reason you're all still breathing right now." A ripple moved through the assembly, some faces softening, others hardening. The commander's gaze lingered on Nora a moment longer before she spoke. "You risk your kind's wrath for ours. Why?" "Because someone had to start believing this cycle can end." The commander turned to Care. "And you believe she speaks for humanity?" "No," he said. "She speaks for hope." That word hung in the air, fragile and luminous. The commander regarded them both, then gestured sharply. "Then you will both bear witness. We will send emissaries to your leaders. If peace fails, it will not be because we did not try." She paused, eyes glinting. "But if it fails, there will be no third chance." Nora nodded. "Understood." When the meeting adjourned, exhaustion hit her like gravity returning after freefall. Kea walked beside her down the long corridor, silent until they reached the viewport overlooking the battle-scarred void. "You were fearless," he said softly. She let out a shaky laugh. "I was terrified." "Then you were human," he replied. "And still you stood." His voice carried warmth that melted the chill she hadn't realized clung to her. "You keep saying things like that," she said, "and people will start thinking you like us." He looked at her, golden eyes catching the starlight. "Perhaps I do." Her breath caught, but before she could answer, Rourke's voice interrupted over comms. "Hayes, urgent! We've got sabotage on the lower decks." They sprinted down the stairwells, passing workers shouting in panic. Smoke coiled through the vents. Lights flickered crimson. At the engine junction, chaos reigned. A ruptured coolant line spraying mist, consoles sparking. A human engineer lay unconscious beside a control panel. Nora dropped to her knees, checking his vitals. "Still breathing?" Care crouched beside her, scanning the damage. "This was no accident," he said grimly. "The breach was deliberate, internal charge. Who would, she started, then stopped as realization struck. Someone who doesn't want peace, he nodded. Both sides have such men. The alarms grew louder. If we don't stabilize the reactor, the ship's core will implode. She looked up at the console, a tangle of alien and human tech. Can you read this? Kaya moved closer, claws dancing over the glowing runes. Enough, but we must divert flow manually. Show me. Together they worked, her fingers moving through human systems, while his recalibrated Tharan conduits. The hybrid nature of the vessel, a result of months of captured tech, made it unpredictable. Heat radiated through the floor, sweat slicking her palms. If this doesn't work, she asked, then at least it fails with purpose. She gritted her teeth. You've got to work on your motivational speeches. He almost smiled. I learn from humans. They activated the failsafe in unison, and for a tense moment nothing happened. Then the roar subsided, alarms fading into silence. The reactor stabilized, its pulse evening out like a steady heartbeat. Nora slumped against the wall, chest heaving. We did it. Kerr leaned beside her, exhaustion softening the edges of his usually stoic face. We save lives together often, he said. It becomes habit, she laughed weakly. Dangerous habit. He turned toward her, expression unreadable. There are worse ones. Their eyes met, the moment stretching until the comm crackled again, Rourke's voice sharp with authority. We found the saboteur. Human engineer, anti-treaty faction. Hayes, Kerr, you're needed in command. The relief of survival turned to a chill deeper than space itself. So it begins, Kerr murmured. Even peace has enemies. Then we treat peace like any patient, Nora said quietly. We keep it alive no matter how many times it stops breathing. They reached the command deck to find chaos once again brewing, humans shouting accusations, Tharan guards gripping weapons, fear thick in the air. Rourke stood at the center, pinning the captured saboteur with a glare. You detonated that charge? For humanity, the man spat. We don't make treaties with monsters. Kerr stiffened but stayed silent. Nora stepped forward, anger tightening her voice. He nearly killed everyone, including humans. Does that sound like loyalty to you? The man sneered. Better dead than ruled. No one's ruling anyone, she said. We're trying to stop dying. He laughed bitterly. You think they'll stop? You're a fool. Nora's hand trembled, but her voice stayed calm. Maybe, but I'd rather be a fool for peace than a corpse for pride. The prisoner was taken away, but his words lingered. Nora felt them like splinters beneath her skin. When the room cleared, Rourke sighed heavily. That won't be the last of them. Plenty who think peace means betrayal. Then we prove them wrong, she said. He nodded, though his eyes betrayed doubt. I hope you're right, Lieutenant. When he left, Kerr turned to her. You carry so much faith, not faith, she said. Stubbornness. Human trait I admire. His tone softened. Even when the stars burn, you keep building fires. She smiled faintly. Guess it's our way of pushing back the dark. They stood in silence, watching the endless void beyond the viewport, both knowing that peace, like healing, demanded endless care. That night the med bay felt heavier than before. Nora cleaned her instruments mechanically, her mind replaying every word of the saboteur. Kerr sat nearby silent, his presence steadying. You're thinking of him, he said. I'm thinking of how easily hate hides in fear. Fear is the oldest weapon, he said, but also the easiest to disarm, with understanding. She looked at him, exhausted but curious. You make it sound simple. It is not, he admitted. But neither is healing. You taught me that. She leaned against the counter, the hum of machines blending with the quiet rhythm of his breathing. You know, when I first saw you, I thought you were going to kill me. He smiled faintly. So did I, she laughed softly, the sound breaking the tension that had coiled around her heart. We've come a long way since then. Farther still to go, he said. His gaze drifted to the stars beyond the viewport. Your kind will test this peace. So will mine. Then we keep trying, she replied, one wound at a time. He nodded slowly, his expression unreadable yet warm. Your words heal more than your hands. She felt her pulse quicken but said nothing. The silence between them wasn't empty anymore. It was full of understanding, fragile and real. The universe outside stretched vast and indifferent, yet within that small room, humanity and the unknown had found something worth saving. In the days that followed the sabotage, Tension rippled through Epsilon Station, like a low, persistent fever. Every door hissed with suspicion. Every corridor hummed with whispers that peace was only a pause before the next bullet. Nora Hayes barely slept, moving between medical shifts and security briefings, her body surviving on caffeine and sheer will. Yet amid the unease, something remarkable persisted. Tharan and human crews working side by side to rebuild what had nearly been destroyed. She watched as a human engineer handed a plasma torch to a Tharan technician without hesitation, and for a heartbeat she thought, maybe it's working. Kerr stood nearby, silent sentinel turned mediator, his presence alone enough to calm tempers before they flared. Still, rumors spread faster than repairs. Some claimed Kerr had manipulated her, that the truce was a ploy to weaken human defenses. Others whispered that Nora herself had fallen under alien influence. When she overheard two medics muttering about the nurse who treats monsters, she ignored them, but the words stuck like burrs. Later that night she found Kerr in the observation bay, staring at the stars. "They fear what they don't understand," she said quietly. He didn't turn. "Fear is their armor. They will remove it slowly or not at all." She joined him at the viewport. "You'd think after everything we've seen people would realize how fragile we are." "Perhaps fragility is what makes your kind strong," he said. "You bend, but you do not break." His voice carried a gravity that made her chest tighten. "You keep saying your kind," she said softly. "Don't you mean our kind by now?" He looked at her then, and for a moment she saw reflection instead of difference. "Perhaps there is no line anymore," he admitted. "Only the space between fear and trust." The silence that followed was gentle, not empty. Outside, the nebula's light washed across his face, softening the edges of alien sharpness into something almost human. She wanted to say more, but alarms shattered the calm. The intercom crackled, Rourke's voice clipped and grim. "Unauthorized shuttle departure. Dock 3. Nora and Kerr exchanged a glance before sprinting down the corridor. They arrived as the bay doors sealed shut. Through the viewport, a shuttle detached and accelerated toward open space, its engines burning hard. "Who's on board?" Nora demanded. The deck officer checked his screen. 3 humans, 2 Tharan. They bypassed lockdown protocols. No response to hails. Kerr's jaw tightened. "Saboteurs." Rourke's voice came through again. "That shuttle's carrying prototype war data, both sides' tech schematics. If it reaches open channels, the truce collapses." Nora swore under her breath. "We have to stop them." "Agreed," Kerr said, "but without triggering pursuit protocols. Then we intercept manually." She turned to Rourke. "Give me a flight team." Rourke hesitated, then nodded. "You get 1 craft. No weapons hot unless fired upon." Minutes later, Nora strapped into the cockpit of a pursuit vessel, Kerr in the co-pilot seat. The bay doors opened, and the vast cold of space swallowed them whole. Stars wheeled around as she accelerated, chasing the fleeing shuttle's ion trail. "Trajectory suggests the outer debris belt," Kerr said, scanning the sensors. "Plenty of cover," she replied. "Plenty of ways to die." "You humans find poetry in danger," he observed. "You aliens build danger into poetry," she shot back. Despite the tension, the exchange steadied her hands. They slipped through the belt's jagged remains, shards of ships long lost to both fleets. The rogue shuttle darted between wrecks, its signal flickering. Nora followed with surgical precision, adrenaline burning clear. "Target within visual range," Kerr reported. Through the canopy, the shuttle's hull gleamed faintly. "We need them alive," Nora reminded. "Alive is relative," he muttered. They edged closer, engaging the magnetic tether, but the shuttle's engines flared, jerking violently. "They're trying to shake us off," she said, gripping the controls. "Hold steady." Kerr rerouted power to stabilizers, the hull groaning under strain. "If they overload, we both burn." "Then don't let them," she tapped the comm. "Unidentified shuttle, this is Lieutenant Hayes. Cut your engines now." Static answered, then a human voice, cold and resolute. "We won't let you sell us out to aliens. You'll doom us all," she shouted. "Maybe that's justice," the voice snapped, and the line went dead. Kerr's gaze met hers, grim understanding passing between them. "They'll self-destruct." "Not if I reach them first." She unstrapped, grabbing a mag tether line. "You're not serious," he said. "You'll freeze. Then catch me fast." Before he could stop her, she launched herself across the void. The cold bit instantly, her suit compensating as she reeled toward the shuttle's airlock. Each second felt eternal, each breath louder than thought. She reached the hatch, forced the override with trembling fingers, and pulled herself inside. The corridor beyond was dim, air thick with ozone. She drew her pulse torch, following the hum of engines toward the cockpit. 2 humans and a Tharan guard turned as she entered. "Stop!" she shouted. "This ship's power core is unstable. You'll kill us all." One man sneered. "You're the nurse, the alien lover." The words hit harder than any bullet. "I'm the one trying to save you," she said. "Same as always." He raised his weapon, hands shaking. "You don't understand. They'll wipe us out the second we show weakness." "I understand fear," she said quietly. "I just stopped letting it choose for me." His finger tightened on the trigger, but a sudden surge of energy rocked the ship. Kair's voice crackled through comms. "Power spike! Core critical!" The distraction gave Nora a heartbeat. She lunged, knocking the weapon aside as it discharged harmless light into the ceiling. The impact threw them both to the floor. Alarms wailed, red lights strobing. "We have to shut it down," she shouted. The Tharan guard hesitated, torn between loyalty and survival. Finally he moved to the console, talons flying over controls. "Manual override locked." "Then break it," Nora yelled. Together they ripped open the panel, exposing the pulsating crystal heart of the engine. Kair's voice came again, strained. 30 seconds before overload. She met the guard's eyes. "Pull the coupler on 3. 1, 2... The deck bucked violently. "Now!" They yanked the core cables free, energy flaring in a blinding flash. The lights died. Silence fell, broken only by the hiss of venting gas. Nora lay gasping, ears ringing. The hum of power was gone. Kair's voice came through faint but alive. "Signal stable. You stopped it." Relief flooded her, so strong she laughed. "You owe me a rescue," she said weakly. "On my way," he replied. Minutes later, he pulled her through the airlock back into the void, his tether hauling them toward the safety of their vessel. Inside, gravity returned, heavy and grounding. She removed her helmet, breath fogging the visor. "Remind me never to volunteer again." "Noted," Kair said, his tone a mix of amusement and worry. "You risk too much." "So do you," she countered. "Maybe that's why we work." Back aboard Epsilon Station, they delivered the surviving saboteurs to custody. The data core, corrupted by the surge, was irrecoverable, a small mercy. Rourke met them at the bay entrance, relief warring with exasperation. "Hayes, if you weren't already a legend, I'd court-martial you." "Can I be both?" she asked. He sighed. "You already are." His gaze flicked to Kair. "And you?" "I don't know whether to thank you or fear you." Kair inclined his head. "Do both." That drew a laugh from even Rourke. The tension eased just enough. For now the truce held, the fires dimmed, and humanity had one more reason to hope. That night Nora stood at the observation deck again, stars stretching infinite. Kair joined her, silent as always. "You keep coming back here," he said. "Guess I like the view. Of stars. Of what we're trying to save." He nodded slowly. "You humans see the infinite and think of home. We see it and think of loss. Perhaps that is why you lead." She turned to him, smiling faintly. "Or maybe we're just too stubborn to give up." He regarded her for a long moment, then said softly, "You whispered once, you're safe now." I did not understand. "I do now." Her heart caught in her throat. "And are you?" He hesitated, then reached for her hand, his touch gentle despite the roughness of alien skin. "I am," he said, "because you are here." The stars reflected in his eyes like tiny suns, and for the first time in years, Nora felt the future wasn't just survival. It was possibility. The war might return, politics might fail, but this moment, this fragile bond, was proof that humanity's greatest weapon was neither steel nor fire, but compassion. The universe could burn 1,000 times and still somewhere, someone would whisper the same promise. "You're safe now." The peace conference convened 3 weeks after the interception, held aboard a neutral orbital ring circling the scarred moon that had once been a battlefield. Nora Hayes stood before the viewport, staring at the planet's shattered surface below, rivers of molten glass threading through grey stone like veins of memory. She had imagined peace would feel brighter, cleaner. Instead, it carried the quiet weight of survival. Kair joined her, dressed not in armor but a simple dark tunic that shimmered faintly with embedded circuitry. "Your world would call this beauty," he said, eyes reflecting the fractured moonlight. "Mine would call it scar." "Maybe both are true," she answered. "Sometimes the only way to remember is to leave a mark." Delegates from both sides filed into the chamber beyond the glass, their movements cautious, deliberate like predators circling an unfamiliar den. Humans in formal uniforms, Theron adorned with ceremonial crests, each carrying the invisible armor of pride. Rourke caught her eye from across the room and nodded once, a silent reassurance. She wasn't technically part of the delegation, yet both sides insisted she attend. The healer of Care, they called her now, as if compassion had become a rank. Care stood beside her, calm and unreadable. "Are you nervous?" she asked. "Always," he said. "It means I still have something to lose." The translator rendered the words softly, almost tender. Nora smiled. "That's the most human thing I've ever heard you say." When the session began, silence fell like gravity. The human ambassador, a seasoned diplomat named Vance, spoke first, his voice measured but weary. "We stand at the edge of extinction or evolution. The choice is ours." The Theron counterpart, Commander Vela, inclined her head. "We come to listen, not surrender." Words turned to arguments, arguments to proposals, proposals to doubts. Nora listened, watching faces tighten as centuries of fear collided with fragile hope. When Care spoke, the chamber quieted. "Once," he said, "I believed strength meant domination. But a human showed me that strength is endurance, the courage to keep living when hatred begs for death." His gaze flicked toward her. "If one act of mercy can end a life of war, then perhaps peace is not impossible, only untried." The words rippled through the room, disarming in their simplicity. Nora felt her throat tighten. Vance leaned forward. "If the Theron can honor that truth, so will we." Commander Vela regarded him with cool intensity. "Peace is not gift," she said. "It is labor." Nora stepped forward before doubt could reclaim the moment. "Then let us labor together." Every head turned. She hadn't been invited to speak, but silence yielded to her voice. "We heal wounds by cleaning them first, by facing the pain. Let this be that moment. No more lies about victory. No more pretending loss doesn't matter." Her voice steadied. "We can't undo the dead, but we can stop adding to them." For a long breath, no one spoke. Then Vela gave a slow, solemn nod, spoken like one who has bled. Negotiations dragged for hours, but the tone had shifted. Where once there was accusation, now there was questioning. Where once there was silence, now there was listening. When recess finally came, Nora slipped into the corridor to breathe. The air tasted faintly metallic, recycled too many times. Care followed, his footsteps soft for someone his size. "You spoke as though the stars themselves were listening," he said. She leaned against the wall, exhaling. "Let's hope they were. They heard," he said simply. "I did." His words warmed her more than the artificial lights ever could. For the first time in months, she felt something dangerously close to peace, like standing at the edge of a storm and realizing it had passed. But storms always left debris. A young Theron soldier approached, hesitation flickering across his features. "Care," he said in accented standard. "May I speak?" Care nodded. The youth's crest trembled. "Some of us do not agree with Vela. They whisper that humans will strike once our guard lowers." Care's expression hardened. "Do you believe them?" The soldier hesitated, glancing at Nora. "I believed many things before I saw you together." Then he straightened. "But whispers grow teeth if not answered." Care placed a hand on the young warrior's shoulder. "Then answer them with truth." When the soldier left, Nora sighed. "He's right, though. Fear feeds faster than hope." "Then we must feed hope more," Care said, "before hunger turns it to ash." That night the orbital ring dimmed its lights to simulate rest cycles, but Nora couldn't sleep. She found herself wandering to the hydroponic dome, where artificial sunlight shimmered over rows of alien and human flora intertwined in shared soil. The engineers had called it symbolic, a living experiment in coexistence. She knelt beside a bioluminescent vine, its tendrils curling toward her hand like cautious creatures. "You don't care who planted you, do you?" she murmured. "Just that you're fed. Like peace," said a familiar voice. She looked up to see Care at the edge of the light, his form haloed by the soft glow. "Peace grows where it is tended, and burns where it's ignored," she added. "Exactly." They walked between the glowing rows in silence until she asked, "Do you ever think about what happens after all this? When the treaties are signed, the fleets stand down and we go back to being just people." He considered the question, eyes tracing the stars visible through the transparent dome. "I do, and I wonder if there is a place for me among them." "You mean among us," she said. "You've earned that." He smiled faintly. "Earning is a human concept. My kind does not forgive so easily." "Then maybe they'll learn from you." "Perhaps," he said. "If I live long enough to teach." She stopped walking. "Don't joke about that." His gaze softened. It was not jest. Before she could respond, an explosion shook the dome. Alarms blared and the lights died. Care moved instantly, shielding her as glass fragments rained down. "Sabotage!" he growled. The airlock slammed shut, trapping them inside as emergency seals activated. Smoke filled the chamber, acrid and electric. "Nora," he said urgently, "the oxygen filter's damaged." She coughed, vision blurring. "Backup controls?" "Across the dome." "Then go," she rasped. He hesitated. "You'll die alone. So will everyone if you don't move." He gripped her hand once, brief, fierce, then sprinted into the smoke. She crawled toward the control panel, lungs burning, the world narrowing to flashes of light and pain. Through the haze, she saw his silhouette wrestling with a sealed conduit. Sparks flared, throwing his features into harsh relief. "Almost!" he shouted, but the sound vanished in the roar of rupturing gas. A burst of light engulfed the dome, then darkness. When she came to, the world was still, the air thin but breathable. Emergency systems hummed faintly. She pushed herself upright, pain stabbing through her side. "Care?" Silence answered. Panic clawed at her chest. She stumbled through the smoke until she found him sprawled near the reactor junction, motionless. "No, no, no," she whispered, kneeling beside him. His chest plate was cracked, bioluminescent blood seeping through. She pressed her hands to the wound, desperate. "Stay with me." His eyes fluttered open, unfocused. "Did it work?" "Yes," she said, tears streaking her face. "So you saved them." His lips curved in the faintest smile. "Then I have learned well." "Don't you dare talk like that," she whispered. "You're safe now, remember?" His hand found hers, claws trembling. "Safe," he repeated softly. "Because human." His breathing hitched, the glow beneath his skin dimming. "Care," she said, voice breaking. "You promised." He looked at her one last time, eyes golden even in the fading light. "Then promise me, keep them alive." The words barely escaped before his body went still. For a moment she couldn't move. The world blurred, sound dissolving into static. Then something deep within her steadied, an old instinct older than orders or rank. She pressed the medical injector against his chest, flooding his veins with the last of the regeneration serum. "Come on," she whispered. "You don't get to die on me." The minutes dragged, each one heavier than grief. Then faintly a pulse, weak, irregular, but there. Relief broke through her like sunlight through smoke. She leaned forward, forehead resting against his. "You're safe," she said again, voice shaking. "You hear me? You're safe." When rescue crews finally breached the dome, they found her sitting beside him, hand clasped around his. Both were alive, barely. In the days that followed, the investigation revealed a joint extremist cell, human and Tharan, united not by species but hatred. The irony burned deep. Yet the attack had the opposite effect they intended. Delegates who once doubted now stood side by side in defiance of violence. The treaty was signed under the light of the same fractured moon that had witnessed their war. For the first time in generations, fleets powered down and silence became the loudest victory. Nora attended the ceremony in a simple white uniform, her arm still in a sling. Care stood beside her, bandaged but alive. When the final signatures glowed across the holographic scroll, a cheer rose, not triumphant, but weary, reverent. Rourke found her afterward, his smile uncharacteristically soft. "You did it, Hayes." "We did it," she corrected. He nodded toward Care. "He's staying?" "For now he's helping build the new medical alliance." "Figures," Rourke said. "You turn an alien warrior into a doctor." "He was always a healer," she said. "He just needed permission." When Rourke left, Care approached, moving carefully but strong again. "You look tired," he said. "You look worse," she replied. He smiled, faint glow returning to his skin. "Then we match." They stood at the viewport watching ships from both species drift together in synchronized patterns, their lights merging into a single constellation. "Do you think it will last?" she asked quietly. "Peace?" He considered. "No, not forever, but long enough to matter," she nodded. "That's all we ever get, isn't it? Enough to make a difference." He turned toward her. "You once asked if I was safe. Now I ask you." She looked out at the stars, at the world they'd salvaged from ruin. "I think I am," she said, "for the first time in a long while." As the orbital ring began its slow rotation, sunlight spilled across the chamber, illuminating their faces. The nurse and the warrior who had dared to believe mercy could end a war. Around them, the hum of life returned, soft and steady. Nora felt the warmth of Care's hand brush hers, an anchor amid the infinite. The universe would forget names, erase battles, bury heroes. But somewhere across the gulf of stars, the echo of a whisper would remain. Proof that humanity's truest strength was not power or conquest, but compassion whispered in the dark to someone who had never known it before. And though centuries might pass, the story would endure. That once, when no one helped the fallen alien warrior, a human nurse knelt beside him and said, "You're safe now."